Hey y'all, welcome back to the #1 rated medical talk show in America, Scrubs and Hearts, and I'm your host, Jalen Reese, and today we'll be talking to a medical expert, Dr. Kendra Fauci, and today we're going to talk about ethics in the medical. First, let's watch a short video about today's topic.
This video is about the 4 principles that form the core of modern bioethics, which include autonomy, beneficence, non-maleficence, and justice. Certain ethical principles guide medical professionals to ensure that they always act in the best interest of their patients while protecting their rights and welfare. Medical practitioners and students have to understand these 4 ethical principles if they want to go into healthcare or nursing as their career choice. Here's what you need to know about each one of them. Principle of respect for autonomy. The ethical principle of autonomy is based on self-governance. It demands that all humans be treated with dignity and respect, even if they are incapable of making rational decisions. It also demands that medical professionals support a patient's individual wishes in regards to his or her health care, as long as those wishes don't conflict with any other principles in medicine. To ensure autonomy, physicians must first obtain informed consent from patients before offering treatment options. Principle of beneficence. The principle of beneficence is related to helping others. By promoting positive well-being in others, we protect them from harms or injuries that might otherwise occur. While there may be limits to what is considered an appropriate action for us to take to promote someone else's well-being, particularly if such actions put our own safety at risk, it is generally accepted that we should do something. To ignore an injured person would be considered morally wrong by most people in most societies around the world. Principle of non-maleficence. Trying to do no harm is one of your basic ethical principles that goes hand in hand with beneficence or doing good. They work together because you wouldn't want to withhold treatment from someone who needed it. It's important to understand that there are different kinds of good. For example, a doctor has an obligation to provide health care when it will help his patient, even if it isn't considered best practice or makes other doctors angry. Principle of justice. Justice dictates that all people deserve to be treated equally and fairly. When it comes to medical research, it means all patients and their informed consent should be considered equal. It also means that researchers should adhere to ethical principles when treating animals or conducting tests on them. To make sure everyone is treated fairly in your lab or practice, monitor every activity by evaluating it through an ethical lens. The only way to ensure you're not running afoul of ethical principles is with a regular ethics audit.
Watching that short clip, can you please information about how you feel about ethics in the medical world, Dr. Fauci?
Absolutely. So first, I want to say thank you so much for having me today. I'm super excited as this is one topic I'm quite passionate about. Health ethics promotes the consideration of values by prioritizing and justifying actions by healthcare professionals, researchers, and policymakers that may impact the health and well-being of all patients, families, and communities. It's an interdisciplinary field that encompasses a broad range of domains such as public health, health research, critical care, and other things you might not really think about. With competing interests under limited resources, health ethics frameworks form systematic analysis and resolution of conflicts through evidence-based application of the general principles that we just saw.
That's very interesting. You never really hear about those type of things in the medical field, but I do see a audience. I think somebody had a question.
Yes, Dr. Fauci, I do have a question. My name is Diamond Scott, and I first want to thank you so much for this opportunity. You are truly one of my idols. My first question would have to be, why are medical laws and ethical laws important?
Absolutely. So these ethical standards are considered above legal standards because individuals are able to make a choice based on the right thing to do, not necessarily what is required by law. As you saw in the video, there is a big thing with consent and written consent and being able to provide the best treatment may not always be the right thing to do. These standards apply to actions that are hoped for and expected by patients and individuals alike. This is a guideline for industry actions, and it provides a standard of operation so that all participants understand that if they don't adhere to this code always, there could be negative consequences for both the patients and themselves as providers. Does anyone else have any questions?
Hi, Dr. Fauci. I also had a question. What are some examples of some ethical issues that you faced in your field?
That's a very good question, as they come from far and wide for ethical issues. So some of the top ones we have are do not resuscitate orders. That is based on the patient's autonomy and their ability to choose for themselves. It is an ethical concern when it's not clear if that patient was incapacitated or capacitated to choose that DNR, or if it is unavailable, say there be an emergency situation where EMS is needed, and that is not clearly listed and they are resuscitated against their wishes. It is because that CPR can be worse for some individuals and they are allowed to choose their initial outcome. Another one is doctor-patient confidentiality. It's a big thing we hear about almost all the time. Yes, question.
Yes, I see you mentioned confidentiality. Could you possibly discuss when confidentiality could be broken?
Yeah, so confidentiality can be broken in certain circumstances, such as if withholding the information could harm either the patient or another individual. This comes up a lot in your more psychiatric cases, as well as trauma cases. You want to make sure that everyone is informed for the safety of others. However, in this age of social media, sometimes it is very difficult because you may share a piece of information or take a picture with somebody's information in the background, and that would not be considered a ethical breach in confidentiality, and it can be very harmful where healthcare providers can be suspended or even fired for posting about certain cases that the world maybe didn't need to know about.
Hi, Dr. Fauci. I had one more question. Can a patient with serious obligations, such as family, refuse treatment?
Absolutely. So that does fall underneath of our autonomy branch, and that people are able to choose their specific course of action. For example, a really big ethical concern right now is about physician-assisted suicide. This is something that has been really, back and forth in our medical community on whether it would be okay or should it be supported. Legalizing this can cause pressure for terminal patients and things like that. However, it is being shown to cause a better quality of life for certain individuals as they are not living their life to the fullest at this moment. It is incompatible with the physician's role as a healer and incompatible with the American Code of Ethics. However, it is still being considered and it is widely being put into action now.
Yes, Dr. Fauci, I do have one final question before you go. Do you believe that ethical responsibility to treat the patient, even if you don't agree with their views, is always the right one?
Now, this question, for me personally, I believe that everybody should be treated. That goes under the justice principle, in that regardless of my views and my personal opinion, an individual should be treated. It is, for example, if someone who had committed a heinous crime has come into my emergency room, I would be obligated to treat them as if they were anyone else in the world. I cannot let their actions define how I treat them. Now, this is different for some individuals that are in healthcare. Sometimes they might pass a patient on to another coworker who maybe might not have the same reservation. For example, a religious thing can be passed on to another coworker in order to maintain that semblance of control, but that person does have to be treated eventually by a provider, whether it's you, yourself, or one of your coworkers that are able to take that off your hands. And if they're not available, then it is within your ethical responsibility to deal with that patient.
Wow, I think that's a lot of information to take in one setting, and it's a lot of helpful information at that to consider. How can you handle all of this?
Lots and lots of practice. The world of ethics is ever changing. There's never going to be a moment where we all agree on something. I believe everyone's got opinions and they like to share it, which means I will be in business for a very long time.
Well, that's good to know. Well, that wraps up this episode of Scrubs and Hearts, and we will see you guys 12 on Tuesday.
So much for having me.